Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Weirdly Magical podcast. And I am Lou. I'm a writer, astrologer, author of Modern Astrology, Harness Your Stars. I can't remember the whole title. It's early in the morning for me because I'm in Utah and Jen's in South Africa right now. So we're spanning the world, the globe, to bring this to you. And you are?
I'm Jen, and I'm an Akashic illuminator. I do Akashic readings, numerology, and I'm the creator of the Illuminating Journey cards.
Speaking of which, Jen pulled a card to kind of lead us in to the discussion of the coming new moon and the energies around it. Full moon.
And yes, the full moon, and the card is the Soul Portal number 20. And for those who can't see, this is an interesting card because it's a figure in ice, and around us clouds, and there's dolphins, so there's all kinds of different waters, frozen and liquid and air, and kind of an angel figure. And I think we had this card before. But however, it's a very interesting card because for me, this is one of those energies where you're between water, as it were. It's very healing, but it's also about the awareness. Like, we have these fixed ideas, and this card shows that we can change that. They can be dolphins with these little crowns, these golden crowns, like offering a change. Like in the midst of frozen water, we can find the joyful, playful dolphins bringing us sovereignty.
And of course, there's a bridge. Is that a bridge? I noticed a bridge.
Yes, the bridge.
So for me, that's what, the dolphin and the bridge are kind of on the same angle, as if to say it's time to take a big leap and cross this bridge. That's kind of, it feels very relevant to me for this full moon, actually. So.
Yes, and it's interesting because it has it's a 20 and it has the 0 in it, and it does feel like it's that kind of, like you say, that leap, that being in that space where you have the opportunity to see what you haven't seen, and so take a new path, forge a new way across into a whole new way of being.
Which brings me into the full moon, really, because this full moon is at 0 Cancer Capricorn. The moon is in Cancer and the sun is in Capricorn. And this 0 is a critical degree, but not only is 0 a critical degree, it's also the cardinal signs, and this aspects or triggers the world axis. So this full moon, to my mind, is bringing a real big change in the world, and we'll speak to that. So the full moon is at 0 degrees it depends where you are in the world, but I'm going to give the universal time on the 21st of December. That's the solstice, actually. The full moon is at 17:48 or 5:48 p.m. in the UK. That's universal time. So that's 12:48 p.m. Eastern, 10:48 p.m. in Utah, 9:48 a.m. in Pacific time. And it comes right after the solstice, because when the sun enters Capricorn, that is the solstice. And the solstice takes place on the 21st of December at 22:22 p.m. Universal time. In some parts of the world, that'll be the 22nd as well. So we've got a lot of 21s, 22s. We're also going to talk a little about how we've got a couple of aspects leading into it: Sun squaring Chiron and Uranus. There's a Uranus semi-square Neptune that we're going to talk a little bit about. And we're also going to talk about how this full moon, actually, all the energy around it, harks back to the eclipse back in July the 12th. Particularly the solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Cancer on July the 12th, because that was kind of the new moon in Cancer. Now we have the full moon in Cancer. and Pluto is opposing the degree of that eclipse. And it's the last in the series. Jen was telling me she looked that up. So the last in that eclipse series. So let's dive in. Jen, you go ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure it was the last in the series. I think I meant it's the last in this year of the eclipse season. The eclipse season closing out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it may be the last. I didn't look that part up.
Okay.
I just want to clarify that it's the end of the eclipse season of this year. We're closing it out.
Okay.
Okay, so what's interesting to me is what you mentioned, the 20s, the 21s, 22s, very powerful because we are in the 21st century. From now on, everyone who's born will have very little one in their first numbers, right? Because as we move next year, 2019 is the final year for 80 years where we have a one in a first, second, or third position, right? In the numerology. So we're moving out of the one phase, which is the individual, into the collective, which is the two. So we pick the card, the 20. This is the collective energy. It's about how we balance where we're coming from, our beliefs against our actions, how we connect to community. It is also about bridging differences in a whole new way. So we begin to look at the collective and our collective focus for at least the next 80 years and certainly for this whole century, right? Because it always has two in the front. So it's a very powerful time because this is the time where we get to either shrink and say, I have no power, or I'm accepting that I have power, and what do I want to do? And what can we do together, right? How can we be of service together? And excitingly, since the full moon is at 0 degrees 49, that again shows us it's a new beginning. So it's funny because the full moons are the end, and yet here this is the double zero, which is new beginnings. And the degree 49 is a 13, which is a very Uranus-based energy. So this is about making change, but sudden change. It's also forcing us to change who we are, even if we don't want to, basically, because we're creating something new. And 1 and 3 make 4, and the 22, which is a powerful universal master number, which is like this double gateway. It's a double portal into entering a space where we begin to, it is the number of the master architect of peace. So we actually begin to focus on what are we going to build? Like, what is the thing we're designing? And I think that speaks a lot to the astrology as well. So, and when you add it together, the 2 and 2 is 4, and 4 is this number. It's the root number of Earth. It's about manifesting things, making them real. 2, 4, and 8 are the numbers that are about bringing reality into the world through our dreams, our imagination, that portal of the 2, that softness. It's a very feminine energy that is allowing us to create something masculine, that yin yang energy again, right? Of the 2 working together. So I think that's pretty exciting. Also, the other thing that comes to mind is December is a 14 universal month, and 14 makes a 5, 1 and 4 and 5. 14 is also a number that speaks to the press, communication, kind of telling people how we feel, because we're getting very clear about we're beginning to see under the layers. So we're not kind of just taking someone else's word for it. We're not just going to go, oh, so-and-so said this, or this is how it's always been done. And it kind of reminds me of the card, right? The card, it's that like, oh, I didn't notice that there's a bridge and like this wide open space that suddenly I can leap into a different way of being. I can choose to focus on, instead of the negative of how we have always done it, kind of going to the bigger focus and going, yes, there are all these problems and issues, but this is what I want. This is what I envision. So collectively, we're coming to that kind of space, and we're like, well, what can I do to kind of get the ball rolling, or get that chariot onto the road and go, okay, here I go. And then I'm going to meet other people that are going in the same direction. So it's a very self-focused, but it's focused for the bigger picture. We're looking at what's going to be happening, and how are we embracing this time? How are we using our energy and communicating what we desire and want to build?
And of course, Capricorn, where the sun is on the full moon, and because it's also right on the solstice, is very much about building too, speaking to your thing about building. And it's about building the structures and the institutions and the containers that, and the rules that we live by. So this is a very much new energy in this, and it's the 0 degree is the Fool card in the tarot, and the Fool card is very much about like you've got all this stuff to create and and to play with, and you choose how you kind of put it together. It's fascinating. And of course, the moon at 0 degrees of Cancer, the moon rules Cancer, so she's very powerful in this position, especially at this critical degree, the 0. And it's all harking back to that eclipse last July. So it would be interesting to look where you were and what's happened since July and what's coming to fulfillment for you since that period. But of course, now the moon's nodes have moved back into Capricorn and Cancer as well, and the north nodes in Cancer. So we've got this convergence happening. And at the moment, we've got Saturn in Capricorn right at 10 degrees, Pluto in Capricorn at 20 degrees. And the two of those are right in the middle between the sun and the south node. And everything's converging together into 2020. So there's those twos again, and the 20s again, where everything come together. And it's there's so much, I've heard a lot of fear go, and of course this is all going to be very disruptive globally, I will say, about all this convergence in Capricorn. But optimistic Saggy that I am, I always see the possibilities. And I see it all as just us really creating these new rules that we want to live by, and it's showing up in the world, with the revolutionary activity going on in France, the Brexit deal in the UK. The vote has been postponed because basically the Theresa May government is falling apart. The Scottish National Party is offering to pair up with the Labour Party in England to kind of take over the government. It's all kind of quite, and then we've got the Mueller investigation in the US. And I don't want to, it's just from an astrological point of view, this is really, well, to my mind, exciting, because it's all like the old structures are falling apart. Excuse my dog. And
your dog agrees.
Oh, I'll let Jen speak for a second.
Okay. Yes.
Barking.
So yes, I think all what you're saying is very true. I think for me, the big thing about Capricorn and Cancer, this really is a key thing right here, right? These are cardinal doorways, right? These are very much about, the Capricorn is very much about how we are in the world. The she-goat, it's actually a female sign to me. We tend to think of it as a male energy. There's a lot of female energy about determination. And when things are collapsing, if you think about a she-goat, she can scamper up and around. Of course, being in fear is a choice, but in order to, and the reason why we feel fear is because things are breaking down. However, we've got to remember or think about the fact that when things break down, it's not like everything disappears, but it's like things will open up. It's like I didn't realize beyond my limited thinking or beyond being saved or held by somebody else, like, oh, I trusted the government, I trusted this is because it's very much about governance and institutions that have been in power for a long time. When they're falling apart, we're scared because we think, oh, the thing I trusted, this, the steps that I walked up are no longer there, they're gone. What am I going to do? And really, it's about coming into that energy. Cancer is about our home, like who are we? Our roots, our memories, our ancestry. What do we think about ourselves in our home? And a lot of that we've been spoon-fed through that kind of Saturnian energy of the institution. And now Saturn, being the father of time or whatever, is reminding us that the old structures break away. And we must remember who we are. We must remember the ancestry, the power we have now as we enter this time that is filled with light, with the full moving away from our vision. And we're going, okay, I'm scared, but I have to do something different. I'm just going to do it. And then how many times when we do new things, we go, wow, why didn't I do that before? But I think the beauty of one of the things that you mentioned, the Neptune-Uranus energy that's happening, coming up, right? That semi-square, I think you said it was semi-square. All of that is about, Neptune is very spiritual and very much about breaking open our old fear, right? Neptune does dissolve fear. It dissolves things. So it dissolves old things, but it also dissolves fear. It dissolves the idea of us being imprisoned by, oh, I have to do it this way. Somebody said it. Now we have this expansion. And Uranus is that kind of lightning strike, that energy, this new beginning. The double zero is so much about we're in that space before the new beginning. We're resting in that space. We're going, wow, I didn't realize there was so much opportunity, so much I could do without being controlled by someone else. That is leading us into a place of light, because Neptune and Uranus are universal energies. They're not individual energies. So collectively, and we've been talking about collectively because the twos are about collective change, we're all moving into the space. So if something happens, it's going to happen to all of us. We're not individually going to be selected, oh, you people will be safe, nothing's going to change in your world. No, we're all going to be in a place of change. So we just have to open ourselves to it. And also, the interesting thing is that this is a 9 universal day, which gives us an ending, right? 9 is ending. It's also about compassionately connecting ourselves to others, recognizing we're all one, that kindness and generosity are the ways we get to play. We got the 4 and 5 at play. So we have the 5, which is about speaking out and about change and freedom. And we have the 4 about making it real. We're laying the foundation. So if you think about it in those terms, if you think about everything that's coming up is about kind of an explosion of freedom. We've talked about, I want to be free. I want to do whatever I want to do. Well, here it comes. However, you need a structure. You need to put things in place. For those of us in business, we have that issue, right? Like, oh, I don't want to do all the things I don't want to do. That's how I want my own business. And then it's like, oh, shit, I have to do all of these things to build a structure, because that's how we are free. Like, to be free, we need responsibility. We need a connection to the earth. We need to have a plan, right? I mean,
Jen's on a roll. I'm dying to say. So I do want to say, yes, of course, Capricorn is a feminine sign. All Earth signs are feminine signs, actually, and the original symbol that a lot of people don't look at with Capricorn is that it's actually the sea goat. So it's actually the goat with the tail of a fish. So that's a fish, and we have fish over in Cancer as well. So this is a very kind of fishy full moon, if you like. And if you think about the symbol of a fish, you know, a fish kind of swims and weaves and is very fluid. So there's a lot of fluidity in this. And I do want to mention as well that Black Moon Lilith is there. So we have this Neptune Uranus semi-square that's kind of bringing the revolution really all around the world. And I was reading, you know, I'm not a mundane astrologer, but I find it interesting. Mundane is basically looking at predicting world events. Okay. But apparently when the end degrees of signs are triggered in mundane astrology, that brings the revolutionary change. So here we have Uranus at 28 degrees of Aries, and Black Moon Lilith is squaring Uranus over there at 28 degrees of Capricorn. And she's a very revolutionary energy herself. She's you know, the wild woman. She's our too muchness, and she's the original female. So, you know, none of this, again, we keep saying it, is about kind of taking over men, but it's about raising up the divine feminine in all of us. It's being revolutionized and being brought back into our collective consciousness. And to go back to my thing that I've been talking about all year about sculpting your future, this is more about taking what we have already. So to go back to what Jen said about none of it's, you know, it's the fear of everything being taken away. Well, that's of course not going to happen. You know, we're just going to rebuild and reshape what we have already in this earth and water kind of way, in a very new beginning kind of way. And you know, the South Node is conjunct Black Moon Lilith as well. So she is really kind of pulling or pushing us away from thinking we have to live by these old structures and rules that we've lived by for thousands of years, really. This is really very such an exciting time to be alive if we can step out of the fear, because we're being given the opportunity by the universe to really create this new way of living and new rules to live by. And that's evidenced by the fact, you know, we have all these what are really new energies in our consciousness, the new planets that the ancients didn't know existed. You know? And to go to, there's a lady called Lynn Coyner who does a research site, and she calls, you know, we have the layers of the planets, and they're all very all have kind of significance. So the Uranus and Neptune, they're transpersonal. So we were moving beyond thinking we were it kind of thing out into the transpersonal. And then we have like the dwarf planets, they're coming in. So we have Eris and Ceres and all of these other newer energies that are new to our consciousness, at least. And these are transformational energies. So Eris is there. She's pretty much conjunct Uranus in Aries, bringing this transformation of our whole society and our whole way of thinking. We're realizing that we're just connected, to go back to the Cancer, that we're one big family. And when I say we're one big family, we realize that we're one big family in the whole universe. You know, what happens out there happens within us. And we're realizing the oneness of it all. So it's quite kind of beautiful in a way. This major transformation is being brought into our consciousness that we just didn't have available to us in centuries past. So.
Yes. I mean, we've entered the age, this new age, and we're only, 5 or 6 years into this age of Aquarius that happens every 26,000 years. So this is a huge shift in our consciousness. It's also a very healing time. I think 2 is the number of healing, and we have the 1s and 2s and the 0s. And of course, the 0 being there is a divine energy. We're also in the 11 year. This is our final month in the 11 year, which is another 2 when you add them together. So there's a lot of light and love and realization that's coming through. Like a lot of our fears are based on the damage we believe has been done to us, that I need to defend myself, I need to hold on to my possessions, all these kind of things. I don't have enough, someone's going to take it away from me. And we're moving into that kind of collective awareness, like, oh, I'm going to share what I have. And then we work together. And all around, I keep seeing people showing stories of kindness. And there seems to be more kindness happening. And that's what's very healing too, is to be kind to others. Because when you're kind to others, just like Louise was saying, this idea of what happens internally happens externally. So when we're kind to ourselves and we're kind to others, that means we're trusting there's enough. Like, I don't need to be nasty to someone because I won't have mine. So that possessiveness that has kind of focused us for the last thousands of years is being dissolved. So we get to go into a much more open place. But again, we have to take responsibility with this energy. It's that recognition, like, what is mine to do? So instead of pointing outward and going, oh, it's their fault, they did the wrong thing. And I think we're seeing that with leadership all over the world, like you were saying, right? That idea that, oh, it's someone else, that didn't happen, that's not true. All of that is kind of coming to the surface, shit rising. And we're going, oh, I see that stuff doesn't work. Like, I'd rather just take responsibility. Yes, I did it. It's fine. I accept it. I'm going to move on. I want to get to something. I want to build something better. And one key thing here is our imagination. Now, you talked about the tarot card, the zero card, the Fool. And I think in the zero too is a lot of that energy of imagination. Like, our imagination is what feeds our ability to build things, to desire and to build. And that's a very important part of this. Is a playful energy. We're moving into a very playful time. If we're willing to have a sense of humor about this, as we build something new, right? We got to find the humor, the delight, the joy in what this is all about. This is an amazing time to be alive, but it's amazing that we have this ability and this connection to our divine sense. And that's awakening within us, where we begin to see so much that we didn't see. So we don't need to live in such a narrow box. Like, little windows are opening.
Oh, they really are.
A different route.
Right?
Yes.
Just Jen saying she's seeing stories of kindness, and I've witnessed that too. And of course, Cancer is a very kind energy. It's the mother, the nurturer. But even bigger concepts too. Like, I've seen, there's actually a candidate who's going to run for president under the Democratic ticket. And, I'm sure he hasn't got a chance of winning, but this doesn't matter, because he's promoting universal basic income, because the new age is becoming automated and there are not going to be the jobs. We're going to have to think differently, which is very Aquarius, about how we can all live together. And, I'm not promoting universal basic income, but necessarily, because I think we have a lot of things to work out. But it's just the very fact that somebody is actually kind of standing up and saying, this is a good idea. We need to think of ideas like this, is coming into our consciousness of how we can all look after each other and all live without grabbing and saying it's mine, 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 as Jen said. So, we've got to look for some of this stuff. You have to, instead of sitting in the fear, we've got to look for where it's showing up in the world, because it's really starting to show up about this caring, realizing that we all have to look after each other. Of course, we're getting the major resistance too of the people. I shared an article about universal basic income just as an idea, and I got called an idiot, and I don't know what I'm talking about, by some old white male.
Well, I think that's really fun, though. This is where the humor comes in, and I think also the idea of speaking. Like, we're terrified of different people having different opinions or thinking differently to us. And that's such an old idea, being terrified of speaking and sharing ideas. Just somebody has, even if they have horrible ideas, it's like I think it's so much easier to talk about the ideas and say, okay, tell me why you have those ideas. Even if we get loud and yell at one another, it's fine. Like, we shouldn't be so afraid of this yelling to kind of realize our voices and what we really think and go, oh yeah, that's a really stupid idea. Because a lot of times our ideas stuck in our heads. We're not actually saying them. And when we say them, we go, wait, that's a really stupid idea. Or, you know what, that's actually not a bad idea. But even if somebody doesn't agree with us or they think we're idiots, that's really funny. I think it's actually fun to go, oh, that's so funny. Somebody has a different idea and I don't even care. Like, I don't even need to agree with them. You know, I was just having a funny argument with my brother last night, and so we were yelling at each other, but it was a very fun. But then we came to this realization that we were actually kind of saying the same thing, just coming from a different point of view. So it took us a while to go from yelling at each other and screaming and saying, I'm not going to talk about this anymore because you don't get my point, to, oh, you know, and then we kind of calmed down and we were talking and going, yeah, we're really agreeing. And it was like, wow, what was all that about? And it felt really good because it basically cleared the air, and it made us realize, like, wow, okay, we don't agree about everything, but we have a lot of principles. Like, we're looking at the bigger principle. How does this impact me? What is important to me in my life, or what I need? Which I think is really what this is all about. I mean, we have people out there offering great things, but they're kind of pointless. Like, a lot of times people are offering ideas that aren't going to serve the greater good. And whereas something like universal pay or universal healthcare or whatever it is, those serve people. How do we clean water? How do we collect garbage? Those are the things that actually serve us as a collective and as individuals.
And how do we pull together to speak of, you know, all this energy converging that we've talked about already before? You know, we've got, you know, we're going to move into a series of eclipses all in Cancer and Capricorn. So this is a major period of time of us all being pulled together about who are we individually in the collective, and how can we bring it together and work together. So it's I keep saying, a very exciting time, I think, personally.
Yes, and it is. I think it's also interesting because where I am right now, we're having issues with the electricity. And so they do this load sharing. They call it load sharing. And so what they do is you have set times where you know your electricity is going to go off. And of course, some people, we have different things to help us with it. But sometimes this is the whole point, is what do you do in an emergency when you're in that space? When things happen, you can either get mad and complain, or you can figure out a way. That's right. Or you can figure out a way. Like, this is it. Uranus is key to invention and what do you call that? Vision. Like, you're coming up with new ideas. What can we do if we don't have an electricity? Maybe this is the time to have solar panels or something, more of them. Like, we're relying on coal's dying out, and oil and all of these things. What else is there? You know, can we burn plastic? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
This is the whole point, is we're getting this idea of what's collectively of benefit to everyone.
And I do want to mention one other thing about the energy of the rest of the month and moving into the new year, is that we've just had Mercury and Chiron turn direct as we record this. And as we record, only Uranus of the main planets is still retrograde, and we've had a year where all the planets pretty much have been retrograde, because we've had Venus and Mars retrograde as well, and they don't turn retrograde every year. And in early January, both Uranus and Eris turn direct. So from early January till early March, so 2 months, we have everything direct that can turn direct in the chart, basically. So we're really in a time of forward movement with all this. So it's the new beginning with the cardinal signs being triggered at the 0 degree of the full moon, and also the forward movement of all the energies in the universe, really saying, you know, it's time to get on with it. We've been through this time of turmoil, but now it's time to really start creating and building the new stuff. It's fascinating.
Yes, yes, lots of lightning and thunder out here where I am. I don't know if you
Oh,
can hear it.
exciting! I could, yeah. I was like, oh, what's
Yes, yes.
that's very
Lightning and thunder.
that's very Uranian.
Yes,
Uranus is a lord of
exactly.
faults.
Yes, it's great. I think I did also want to mention the solstice. I don't know if we mentioned the solstice, and I think this is a really key part in the northern part of the world. Of course, we're in the winter solstice, and solstice, of course, means the sun standing still. So it's a time of stillness. It's very much about coming into the 0 energy, which this full moon, I think the last full moon, the next couple of full moons are all going to be at zeros. So it's very much about this creative energy, but the collective, with the collective, the can do, begin to take action, but following our heart, opening our heart, trusting with the Cancer and Capricorn energy to kind of fish. How do fish move through the ocean, through water? What does water do? But I did also want to mention what I think is interesting is that Mars is at 23 degrees in Pisces, so also in water. Our libido, that kind of energy of fire, is 23. It's a very powerful number. It's also a 5, called the royal line. So it is inviting us to trust that energy, like know who we are, trust the messages we're getting, and move through that. Chiron is at 27, which is the 9 again, which is again this energy of bringing peace. Like, we're not going to stop things from happening, but we can see life through that filter of peace and kindness, and let go of our resentment and go, it doesn't matter. Okay, they're not going to see my point of view, or they're not going to agree with me. We're not going to resolve. I'm just going to let go of this pain, which I think is really important to think about. It's up to us to kind of choose to let go of the old way of thinking and go, okay, right, let's just move past this area. How can we work together? Yeah. And it reminds me of that thing, Lou, that you said at the beginning of the year, if it's meant to be, or something's up to us, or how?
It's up to me.
If it's meant to be,
that's right. We each play our part in it all, basically. Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
So I did also want to mention, and one thing, as you mentioned, the actual solstice. Right before the solstice, Mercury is conjunct Jupiter again in Sagittarius. Of course, that is harking back to right at the end of November. Mercury retrograde was conjunct Jupiter at the beginning of Sagittarius, and these two are going to be conjunct at 9 degrees of Sagittarius right before the solstice. So there's that 9 again, the endings that Jen has talked about. And of course, Sagittarius is the archer. It's about the bigger vision, seeing the bigger picture. So with Mercury as well, which is the mind and our perceptions, conjunct Jupiter, which is expansion, and Jupiter rules Sagittarius, I think we're going to get some big messages in the news and some big kind of awarenesses of like, oh, that's how it could look, that kind of energy.
Yes. And what do we dream? Because so many of us have compacted our dreams and said, I have to put that away, that's not practical. And now we have the opportunity to not only dream it, but to build it. And expanding our minds. This is a time of actually allowing the message. It's a great time, the last the full moon and the solstice, to take time to just sit in stillness. You know, the sun is so powerful because it is our light, right? We look to the sun for the light. We do things in the daylight. We have our imagination at night with the moon, and in the daylight we take action. So standing still for the solstice, for the full moon, and kind of thinking, looking back and going, you know, these are my dreams. These are the things, the bigger things. And then what is it that I can do now to activate that? You know, it doesn't have to be something major, but kind
Doesn't.
of focusing and starting, right? Starting like you did. You decided you were going to write, and so you just started writing, and
And
you build it up.
to go back to the Mercury Jupiter thing as well, it's about possibilities and opening your mind to different ideas. I'm going to go back to that guy again that called me an idiot, because it's such a perfect example. And I don't care that he called me an idiot. I find it funny.
No,
But
hilarious.
but he was like there, because he'd studied economics, okay, at some point. He is like, there are these models of economics, the Keynesian, the this, the this, the this, and that's it. And if you don't know them, you don't know what you're talking about. And I was just like, open your mind, dude.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know.
Different age. There's different ways of looking at this, you know.
Well, you know, the thing is, the interesting thing about the mind is, especially from the, you know, we've used the mind as kind of like a tool. Well, only what's existed, only what's known can be done. And this whole thing about Neptune and
Uranus
and the Pluto energy, the healing allows us to see more. But the Uranus and Pluto and the Jupiter and Mercury, those are all things that allow us to go, well, why don't we just see what could come in? Like, why don't we test it out or come with an idea that's never been explored? And who knows what we could come up with? That's the whole point of collectively coming together with ideas. Even people who have no education can come up and say, you know what, I've always had this thought in my mind, or suddenly I've got this great idea. We're shining a light on it. Again, the sun, right? The sun shines a light on things, and that's kind of where we need to go. Like, and do it joyfully. Like that idea of being somebody calling you an idiot really doesn't matter, right? That's their opinion. It's not a truth.
But I want to talk about, I quickly want to mention somebody else in the news that's this is all showing up in, and that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, no matter what you think of her personally, this girl is being activated by this chart big time. She has 2 cardinal grand crosses in her chart, one at the beginning degrees and one being triggered by the Pluto degrees. And she is like coming out with all these different ways of looking things with the Green New Deal and all that. And you know, she's just a prime example, and she's also Eris embodied. I'm doing a talk on that, and for the EA Zoom meetings, a free talk, the end of year 1, that's on December the 20th. I get my 15 minutes to talk about how Eris is being activated in all this.
Yes,
I'm going to write about it as well, but there she is, a prime example of this kind of Uranian shake it up, Eris kind of revealing what's not working, and she's just coming out with all these new ideas and showing how the old ways are working, right down to our legislatures not paying their interns.
Oh, yes, I saw that. Yes, that's brilliant. I was just looking while you're talking. I do want to say something about it, but I just noticed that Venus is actually at 14 degrees in Scorpio, with next to Ceres, who's at 17, which is an 8. So that 5 is matching Mars. You know, it's a different 5, but it's about speaking up. And the thing that strikes me about Cortez that is so powerful is she represents the new female, right? This is the energy, this chart, this time we've talked about the power of the female changing. She is somebody who has come to terms with her masculinity, and she is not threatened by her masculine energy. She not only can come up with ideas and brilliant thoughts, but she can speak about them. She can express it. She can, when she's challenged, she's not running away saying, "Oh, did I offend you?" That's why she's so, she is confusing people who are used to just, "Oh, I'll just use a few words and then you little female will crawl back into
Yeah.
your hole.
Yeah.
And she's
It's
like,
answering
no,
right back.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. She's like, let me tell you about this. And I think this is the power of these people that are born in this age, right? They're
Mm.
younger, male or female. Their femininity and their masculinity is in balance. Again, that's that 2, the 20, bringing things into balance, taking away the anger. Like, I'm not angry because you have a different opinion, but I'm just going to point out what's weak in your thinking or in your action,
Yeah.
and here's something we can do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The hands-on approach. It's a mind, hand, like heart, hands. This is what this time is all about.
So, because I have a habit of forgetting them, shall we talk about the
Yes,
symbols?
indeed.
I'll let you do the
Let's do
Sabian
that.
one first.
Okay, let me just find my note here. Aha. So, Cancer 1 degree. On a ship, the sailors lower an old flag and raise a new one. So the keynote is a radical change of allegiance, exteriorized in a symbolic act, a point of no return. We have now reached a square, go degree angle to the beginning of the cyclical process. This is a moment of crisis, a sharp turning point. In the zodiacal cycle, at the summer solstice, the northward motion of the sun stops. The sun rises and sets far north of exact east and west, as it can during the yearly cycle. In motion is now reversed. Slowly the sunset points move southward on the horizon. The length of the day decreases. So in the new moon, it's the first quarter phase on the ship, which symbolizes the ego consciousness floating, as it were, on the sea of the vast unconsciousness. The individualized will makes a basic decision. The dominant yang force allows the yin force to begin its 6-month-long rise to power. Okay, so the collective will gradually overcome the individual, and at the end of the state will overpower the person. Now, however, the individual person enjoys his most glorious hour. He exults in his ability to make a free decision.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Very in mind of what we've been saying. Yes.
Yes.
And the keynote at the end, or the little bit at the end, says the consciousness accepts a process of fundamental reorientation, which is really what we've been talking about so all the time. So I love how these things show up. So
absolutely.
I did want to mention before I read the Chandra symbol that Cortez was born with Uranus and Neptune and Saturn all together in Capricorn. She's part of that generation. So it goes back to the other energies we've been talking about. So, you know, I don't think she's kind of some world savior or anything. I always think these people are like representations of the energies. And I just love that she is just such a good one of a good example.
Absolutely. Very clear. She's a very clear sign of the times. And again, we cannot afford to put all our energies or eggs in one basket and say, oh, this person's going to lead the charge. We all have to take responsibility and do the things we're here to do, right? And watch the signs.
We're not looking for another Messiah, because we are our own messiahs. So.
Collectively, we could be the people, you know, we create that energy of going forward.
So the Chandra symbol kind of really goes back to my whole theme of sculpting, and it's a potter at work, carving out a sacred place for what you most care about to flourish, giving your all to a task or project, a way of life or shared stream, socio-culturally gifted, selecting out what you feel pulled to cultivate and foster, and eliminating all other factors. You feel nurturing, sustaining, giving, but unwilling to and unable to recognize and come to terms with shadows and difficulties. So intent upon creating a perfect world or vessel that you miss whatever you do not want to see. And that's a precarious edge to walk. So it's really speaking to me about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You know, not not thinking everything old is bad and everything new is good. You know, we've got to bring what we've got all together and sculpt it and become that potter at work. So
Exactly. And I think, coming back to the time, the 21 is the number of truth. And that's, we say the truth will set us free, our truth. And again, that's about this idea of bringing things into balance. The 22, it's that, double match of recognizing the old, the new, what's the good and the bad, like what is it that we want to take forward, not whether it's old or new, but what makes sense and what emotionally connects us. And I think it's interesting too, the flag, the idea of you're on a boat and you have been at sea and whatever you've experienced is over. Maybe you had a battle, maybe you went on a grand adventure, and it's that moment when you put up that new flag and you're saying, I'm coming with my experience, but I'm also open to you reaching out and your olive branch or your idea. So I think it has a lot to do with opening up to that idea.
And of course, raising and lowering an old flag and raising a new one speaks to revolution as well, and new
totally.
kind of government. So it's interesting times. But I am going to have to finish this now. So Jen, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
They can find me at jendushen.com. I also have a group on Facebook, the Light Club of the Woo-Woo Weirdos of the World. And of course, you can find me everywhere under Jen Dushen, YouTube. I'm doing more videos and Instagram, etc., Facebook.
Cool. And of course, we have a weirdly magical YouTube channel now that if people would like to subscribe to it, this video will get uploaded every month, as well as being available in all other streams like iTunes, Spotify, all those places, Stitcher. And if you like our podcast, please give us a review on iTunes or wherever you watch us. I am Louise Eddington. You can find me at louiseeddington.com or just Google my name. I have a Facebook group called the Planetary Magic Cafe. I'm also on Patreon, and on medium.com is where I write all the time, a lot. And my book, Modern Astrology, is doing so well, and the reviews are great. So check it out on Amazon if you haven't checked it out yet. But for now, it's my birthday week, so I'm going out for brunch with some friends. And so it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.